Betrayed, humiliated, but not defeated, Deku's rise begins now. We start a new day of classes at the prestigious UA school. We see how our friend Broccoli goes with his friend Ida talking about what they are going to do on Valentine's Day, and Ida was telling Broccoli that he was going to go out with his girlfriend Uraka. Yes, as you read, Uraka and Ida are boyfriends, but how? One day Ida asked Izuku for some advice to ask her out on a date. Izuku gladly told him where to take her, since Izuku only sees Uraka as a good friend. Ida, and then I'm going to take her to a restaurant to end this day. And what are you going to do, Midoriya, who are you going to ask out? He turned to see his best friend. Izuku, I don't know, sweetie, nobody loves me, that's been happening since high school and I don't think it'll change here, he said dejectedly. Ida, don't worry Midoriya, one day you will find someone special, looking at his friend, and noticing that they have already reached the locker area. Izuku, no lose too. He saw how 7 cards fell from his locker. Wow, there are 7 cards Ida, he said nervously. Ida, it's obvious, Midoriya, but who are they from? He said this to find out who the people who sent the letters were. Izuku, they are from Yaoiruzu, Tsuyu, Jiro, Kendo, Yui, Ibara and Kemi, and it says, it's all in the description, it says to go to the rooftop after school. Ida, congratulations Midoriya, you don't see 7 girls confessing their love to you every day, he said this, impressed by his partner. Izuku, you're right Ida, but I don't know, with all of them I've developed a fondness for them more than friendship. If all 7 of them ask me out I'll have to choose one, since it wouldn't be right for me to go out with all 7 of them at the same time, it would be like being unfaithful. He said something serious, but nervous, he had a fondness for all of them that is more than just friendship. Ida, well, you're right, it wouldn't be right to go with all of them at once, you'd have to choose one, adjusting his glasses. Izuku, well I'll think about that later, I still have time until they declare their love to me, he said with a somewhat shaky smile, shall we go to the living room? Ida, okay, let's go now, we're running late, he said, walking with his friend to the classroom. Time skip after school. Narrator. Izuku and the girls were on the rooftop. Izuku was more excited and nervous ever, because before no one had declared their love to him because he was someone without a quirk. The girls were also a little nervous.
Izuku, why did you do you need me, girl?
He said it nervously and excitedly, also looking at the floor. Kendo, well Midoriya, we wanted to know if you wanted to be our boyfriend? She said nervously. Izuku was too happy, nothing could make that big internal smile he had disappear. The 7 of them wanted to go out with him, he was almost crying with happiness, but, not everything is rosy. M/K/Y, ha 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 ha, you fell Izuku, it's just a little joke, they said it with laughter but they didn't realize that the green-haired boy didn't like the joke. Tsuyu, Midoriya, that's not fair, I don't continue because of the green-haired man. Izuku, note Tsuyu sniff, I understood, yes it was a sniff, good joke, ha ha ha, he said while faking a big broken smile and had some tears coming out of his eyes, I fell sniff, it was a very good joke. Izuku, note Tsuyu sniff, I understood, yes it was a sniff, good joke, ha ha ha, he said while faking a big broken smile and had some tears coming out of his eyes, I fell sniff, it was a very good joke. They were all sad seeing the green hair's reaction, and those who were most hurt were those who told him it was a joke. When they were about to say something, Izuku interrupted them. Izuku, oh damn, I'm already late, sniff, oh god, girls sniff, see you later, activates his quirk and runs away crying his eyes out. Kendo, what's wrong with you guys, why did you call Izuku that? He probably hates us and it's all his damn fault, she said angrily and with great sadness because she couldn't say anything to Izuku. You, pointing to Momo, he never looked for you, he saved you at camp and understood you perfectly since you have the same tastes, and if it weren't for him you would practically always have only one friend, you. Now Kemi, he saved you at the entrance test so you could pass, and after that he supported you in everything he could. Looks at Yui, and you're the worst of all because even though you ignored him, he always wanted to be close to you to help you with your quirk and to be able to be your friend, she said it screaming and furious since the others really loved him. Momo, it's true, he managed to convince my parents not to compromise me and to be able to continue with my dream of being a heroine. Why did I lie to him? Why did I tell him all that? Now he surely hates me, said the black-haired woman through tears. Yui and Kemi were also crying, not only because of what they said to Izuku, but also because everything Kendo said is true. They are despicable people. Days passed and Izuku became more distant from each girl. His friends never let them get close and he always said he was busy doing something more important. they thought, what is more important than spending time with me? They just kept trying to talk to him. One day he simply did not go to the classroom. Aizawa entered the classroom somewhat seriously, nothing out of the ordinary, but he had news that for some would seem strange and for others it would destroy them. Aizawa, well guys, if you're wondering why Midoriya isn't here, it's because he had to go to Island to do some labs. He's going with AM and the Big Three. He'll also take advantage of the opportunity to train with the high technology there and to control his quirk. An Izuku was seen boarding a plane, but when he was about to get on he stopped and looked at the city and said, "Izuku, this is not a goodbye, but a see you soon," he whispered to himself, and remembering everything he lived in his city, he lived bad things, his childhood, his pre-adolescence and many other things, but as much as he lived bad things he also lived good things, like, he never lacked the support of his mother, his first friend who, if he remembers correctly, was called 02, but she disappeared, although he never gave up looking for her. Apart from that, he got friends that he would protect with the quirk that was entrusted to him by his master. But he was brought out of his thoughts when a voice called him. "Come on Dad, get up quickly, I want to go to Island." That voice was Eri Midoriya. She was saved in the fight against Chizaki. Although Mirio lost his quirk and Sir died, they promised to take care of her. "Izuku, I'm coming, he said with a smile as he grabbed her hand and went to where they were, Mirio, Nehire, Tamaki and AM. At the same time he got lost in his memories of how these 6 months passed. Flashback. After Valentine's Day, some couples were satisfied with the gifts or the 7W7 night of passion that their respective partners gave them on the best Valentine's Day. But well, we want to know what happens in the UA, that academy that is to train future heroes, but we focused on the room of 1A. Everyone was gathered watching television, some depressed, but not everyone was in the room. A green-haired boy was locked in his room while listening to sad music. His friends, Lita, Uraka, Bakugo and Todoroki, were talking to him to come out, while Bakugo was screaming. In other rooms, of you-know-who, they were locked up while some listened to sad music, others created dolls of a certain rabbit hero, and so on. They were quiet until Professor Aizawa and Japan's #1 hero AM came in. They called everyone to the common room to tell them something. Aizawa, well, I called them here because they are the best of the best. Me, cut, this wasn't in the script. Black, what do you mean? While he started looking at a book that said script, yes, right, take two. Take two. Aizawa, well, I called everyone to have a battle with the 3 big ones, while he looked sideways at someone who was missing but at the others. That impressed everyone, since they have already left school, which means that they are in second year, so the declaration was at the beginning of second year, but why do they want to fight again? AM, young Mirio asked us, since some of you already faced villains last year, apart from that you faced Chizaki, and he wanted to know if he could face them again to see if you gained some experience, that already cleared most of your doubts, but someone saw that one more person was missing. Tori, but Sensei's Izuku is not here. The others noticed who was missing and others. Is it necessary to say it? We're going to talk, but AM spoke. AM, Sai Aizawa takes the students to change and then to the Gamma field, while I go to talk to Midoriya Shonen, to which Aizawa nodded and told the others to follow them. Some were going to protest, but with a look from Aizawa he silenced them. While the others left, AM went to Izuku's room. He was thinking what to say to him when he remembered something that he and Izuku shared. When he got to the room he knocked on the door, but nothing happened. He knocked again and heard nothing, then he spoke. AM, Midoriya Shonen, please open the door. I waited and nothing happened. He spoke again. Please, I will open the door, I want to talk. I don't hear anything. AM was worried about what he opened the door with the emergency keys, since Nezu duplicated the keys to all the rooms to avoid incidents. When AM opened the door she saw that everything was in disarray, clothes thrown on the floor, her notebooks were open with the homework that Aizawa gave her, something that impressed AM since she was still doing her homework in depression, and when she looked at the bed, there was a bundle with many sheets, so AM knew who was there. AM, Midoriya Shonen, come on, get up. Your classmates have already gone to change. He spoke without getting an answer, so he sighed. Midoriya Shonen, I went through the same thing as you when I was at UA. He noticed how the sheets made a field as if he wanted to hear, so AM smiled and sat next to his bed. He is in his skinny form. AM, when I was a student at UA, I was one of the weakest since I didn't control the OFA. They always told me to give up on that dream. I have doubted if I deserved the OFA. There was even a time when I told my teacher to give the OFA to someone else because I wasn't the right one. Do you know what happened next? He said with a smile, to which Izuku let his head out and shook his head in a no sign. It hit me so hard that I couldn't go to UA for 2 weeks, he said while laughing, and Izuku let out a small laugh while sitting next to him. AM, but we are straying from the topic, to which her expression changed to a melancholic one. which Izuku noticed and paid more attention one day. If I'm not mistaken, I was in my third and last year at the UA. At that time I have been able to improve and control the OFA more. At that time it was Valentine's Day. I was used to not receiving letters or anything, so I was calm. When classes ended I saw a letter on my desk. I thought they put it by accident or it arrived flying. I checked it to find out who it was addressed to, and what a surprise I got, since that letter was for me. It was the first letter I received in a long time. While smiling, a tear came down and Izuku noticed it, only that he didn't say anything. Wow, I'm even crying. He wipes away his tears. I was excited since it was the first letter I received. In the letter there were 7 different writings, which meant that there were 7 girls, while Izuku was shocked by that fact. Izuku, the same thing happened to me, he said while AM smiled. Apparently being quirkless was not the only thing in common. In the end they said they wanted me to go to the back of UA. I went and found them, but before getting closer I heard them saying they were going to play a joke on me and some boys were hiding. It seems they wanted to play that kind of heavy joke to upload it to the internet, he said, while Izuku felt bad since they only told him a word and his teacher was going to play a joke on him to upload it to the internet. But what I want to tell you, Shonen, is that you don't have to be sad about this. I know there were 7 girls and on Valentine's Day they played with your feelings, but remember there are millions of women around the world and I know you'll find the right one. But you won't find her if you stay here. You have to go out and find that girl. While he got out of bed and looked at Izuku and went to his muscular form. So Shonen, get out of bed and go change and put on that smile, because even if the road is difficult you always have to put on a smile. Izuku stood up and hugged AM tightly as tears came out. Izuku, thank you, while repeating the same word. After that Izuku ran off to the locker room, leaving AM leaving the room and heading to the Gamma field. With Izuku, after putting on his sports suit, went out and ran to the Gamma field. When he arrived he saw most of his class on the ground, except Bakugo and Todoroki, and in front of them were Nehire and Tamaki. Izuku went to where Bakugo and Todoroki were and they noticed his presence and asked him. Bakugo, nerd exclamation mark dot 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 dot, was it okay? He asked, worried since he knew what happened. Izuku, yes, I'm fine, and why didn't you participate? He asked, surprised. Todoroki, we were waiting for you. The 3 of us wanted to fight against Mirio, while pointing at Mirio talking to Nehire or Tamaki. Izuku, but Mirio-senpai doesn't have a quirk. Don't you remember that he lost his quirk saving Iri-chan? He said worriedly. Bakugo was going to speak, but Mirio, Tamaki and Nehire came over to talk since they heard about Mirio. Mirio, just because I don't have a quirk doesn't mean I'm going to be weak, and we're going to fight like before, to which they were surprised. I mean, we're going to fight without a quirk. To which they were surprised, and before speaking Aizawa called them to give them something. After the fight. I'm too lazy to put the fight, so it's going to be a chapter about the fight. Izuku was with some bandages on and looked in the mirror. He had some clothes to go out. He looked at himself for a while longer and decided to go down. When he lowered his gaze they focused on him, so they decided to ask, since it is not very common to see him like that, but a person already had an idea. Kirishima, where are you going, Izubro? He asked while some girls listened attentively. It seems that there is someone going to meet you. Of course he said it as a joke, but that backfired and some girls felt a pain in their chest when he answered. Izuku, yes, I'm going to go wait for someone, as he went straight to the door, but someone asked him. Bakugo, nerd, are you going to wait for her where you always do? He asked, causing everyone to look at him strangely. Izuku, yes, and he walked out the door. While Izuku was going to the forest, when he reached a tree split in half, he took a photo of him and a girl. Izuku, I still hope to see you again, 0, while smiling, and the whole place was becoming cloudy, meaning that he is going to wake up. End of flash black. Izuku was waking up because a little hand was moving and it was Iri-chan's. He woke up and looked at her. She smiled and said, Iri, Dad, we're almost there and AM told me to wake you up, to which Izuku smiled at him and thanked him. As he looked out the window and noticed that they were about to reach a floating island, everything was calm, but from one moment to the next there was an explosion on the left wing of the plane. Everyone was scared, so the heroes, AM, Nehire, Tamaki, Mirio and Izuku, who was carrying Iri, calmed them down and went to look in the pilot's cabin, finding the 2 dead pilots with a cut on their neck. Izuku, B, but how did this happen if there was no one who entered the cabin while covering Iri's eyes? Tamaki, W, it seems that some villain with teleportation was on the plane, so he must have entered stealthily, killing the pilots and blowing up the left wing, Tamaki said a little nervously. AM, after we worried about the villain, now we must try to get the people off the plane. Everyone went to where the people were, seeing that they were a little calm, but still the panic she felt was greater, so they came up with a plan. Nahir approached 5 people and told her to try to grab her, so she went to the door and opened it, jumping and holding it. 5 people using her quirk could go down slowly. Tamaki ate an octopus and on it they turned into tentacles. With that she could grab 10 people and be able to jump while she wrapped her tentacles around them to protect them from their fall. AM grabbed the last people and told Mirio, Izuku and Eri that she was scared and being hugged by Izuku, that there was a parachute in the background. And how does he know there was a parachute? Easy, he looked in the cabin and there was only one parachute, indicating where the parachute was. He said goodbye by jumping out of the plane. The plane was increasingly going down, so they rushed to grab the parachute. Izuku saw a label and it said that it could only hold the weight of 2 people, so he made a decision. Izuku, Eri-chan. I called Eri, so she turned to see him and saw that he had tears in his eyes. She was going to speak, but Izuku spoke. You know that I love you, like a daughter receiving a nod, while Mirio saw them having a bad feeling. And I'm proud to be your father. Come and give me a hug, to which Eri approached to hug him, and when she was going to speak, Izuku semi-knocked her out. Mirio, Izuku. What's wrong? Mirio shouted. Izuku, here. Mirio, while giving him Eri, put on the parachute and jump. I'm going to try to get the plane away from the city. As he walked away and Mirio realized what he was planning and shouted. Mirio, no. We can still jump all 3, the parachute will hold all 3 of us, trying to make him reconsider. Izuku, that's impossible. Mirio, the parachute won't hold us. When we open it, it's likely to break and we'll fall to our deaths. While he had his back to Mirio. Mirio, but didn't you say that you loved her? What will happen to your mother? He shouted at her. Izuku, you're right, he said, still with his back turned. As he turned around and Mirio saw that his face had several tears. Tell them that I forgive them for this and that I love them. As he approached and pushed Mirio and Eri. Mirio, Izuku, he shouted with all his strength, and then opened the parachute, tightly grabbing Eri, who was crying. While on the plane, Izuku took the pilot's body out and took it somewhere else. He sat in the seat while communicating with the tower. Izuku, this is Flight 291, I repeat, this is Flight 291, do you copy? While he was pressing some buttons and they wonder how he knows about airplanes? Easy, he reads books and by chance he found one about airplanes, so he read that one and others. Tower, this is Tower Flight 291, but you are not Wilson, are you a child who was passing by there? I asked, since the scoreboard did not show anything. Izuku, I am Izuku Midoriya, a UA student. I am 16 years old, Flight 291 is about to crash, the 2 pilots are dead and the left wing is damaged by an explosion. Tower, what? How did that happen? When I was in Japan the plane was in top condition. He shouted, causing everyone in the tower to pay attention. Izuku, it seems that a villain infiltrated and killed the pilots. I don't know the reason why while he was preparing, since he saw the island. Tower, how are the passengers? I asked. Izuku, they are fine. They must have fallen with 4 heroes on an island. There is no one here with me, so I want to say a few words, he said as he tried to raise the plane to fall on the artificial beach that was built on the island. Melissa told him before coming. Tower, well, tell me, is the repeater on? While I saw that it was moving away from the city and going to the artificial beach, I don't know if I should worry about that since there is no one there at that time. It's 11 in the morning, apart from the fact that I sent some rescuers to look for the passengers and firefighters to the beach. Izuku, I just wanted to say that, I'm sorry Mom, I'm sorry Eri-chan, I'm sorry for not being with you anymore. I would like to say goodbye to you Mom, but it seems that I won't be able to. To you my little Eri, be strong, remember that Dad loves you. I'm already saying goodbye to them. I can now die in peace. Although I would have liked to be a hero, it seems that it won't be possible. The only thing I regret is not being able to find you. The transmission is cut. Tower, Izuku? Answer hello hello? He shouted until an explosion was heard in the distance, meaning that it exploded. It was nighttime in Japan, but that doesn't matter to us if we didn't see the UA common room. The boys from class 2A and 2B were there. Why? They got together to talk about their stuff and play. They practically had a sleepover with the 2 classes. They were talking quietly, or others were watching television. Everyone was calm until, suddenly, the channel was interrupted and now they were giving the news. Presenter, good evening Japan. Today there was a tragedy with Flight 291 as it was attacked by the League of Villains. She spoke with a noticeable sadness in her voice. While she was speaking, those around the television spoke to each other. Kirishima, boy. Guys. Come on, they're broadcasting a news report about Izu Bro's flight. He spoke desperately as it seems that something happened, although he had the feeling that he wouldn't like what he saw. When they heard the scream, everyone went to the television, seeing that the reporter was still talking. Reporter, according to what we were able to find out from the control tower, the pilots had died while driving, but it is not known who killed them. Apparently the killer had a teleportation quirk, since he was able to damage the wing of the plane. The kids in the room were gasping for air because of the news. Reporter: fortunately, most of the passengers are safe, since there were heroes on the plane. That relieved them a little, but they didn't trust that of the majority, so they paid more attention. Now with the sad part, the UA student Izuku Midoriya drove the plane to the beach that was created by the scientist David Shield, saving the lives of thousands of people in the city. But not his own. The student Izuku Midoriya didn't have time to jump out of the plane. Everyone in the common room was in shock. Their green-haired friend is dead. Those from Class B remained silent, even Monoma, one of the people from Class A who helped them and made them see their mistakes, is possibly dead. They did not want to believe it. They denied his death. They think it is only because he stayed up too late at night and that is affecting them. Same with Class A, their friends, Lita, Uraka, Bakugo, Todoroki and Kirishima, were crying. Of course Kirishima, Bakugo and Todoroki were looking away so they wouldn't see them cry. While the girls did not believe what they saw, the boy they wanted was dead. This never came to their minds. They think it is a dream, one in which they will wake up and see Izuku waking them up with a kiss. If it was that. Just a dream. Wow, they are going through a bad time, but let's see what happens with the others. In the principal's office. All the UA teachers were watching the news. It was a silence that could be cut with just a knife. No one could believe it. Their best student is dead. Midnight could not hold on and fainted, so everyone went to see her. Aizawa. His teacher, the one who always said he would protect his children from all evil, failed. He couldn't protect his child. He felt like shit even knowing that it wasn't his fault. He believes it was his fault that before he left he was held back. He had a feeling that he was going to die. He just had to have held him back. Aizawa, only one thing you had to do, one thing, and that was to hold him back. It didn't matter if they missed the flight, it was just to hold him back, and now he's dead, his subconscious screamed. It reproached him only so that he ended up crying. Both in his mind and outside he was crying, thinking that his student was dead. With the pussycats. They were a little calmer than everyone else. Now they had to avoid him seeing them since they didn't know how he would react if he found out about the death of his idol and older brother. They were going to change the TV when they saw Kota petrified watching TV. Petrified, a helicopter was recording and you could see the destroyed plane, and it said, "Hero Deku dies saving people by crashing the plane to another less traveled part." Mandalay came closer and heard him crying, so she hugged him tightly while he hugged her back. Mandalay listened to him speak. Kota, B, because sniff, the sniff is alive, sniff, this is a sniff, a nightmare sniff. Mandalay just hugged him tighter while the rest joined in and hugged them. With ink. She was watching TV while Mitsuki accompanied her. It had been a while since the duo had met up and they decided to get together and talk. The two were talking animatedly when Inko went to the kitchen to bring some cups of coffee and some cookies. When Inko left, Mitsuki changed the channel to a news channel to see what was on when the news about Izuku came on. Mitsuki stood petrified watching how her nephew died. It didn't take long for her to move as she heard some cups fall to the ground. She turned to where it caused that noise and looked at Inko with red eyes and trembling. She heard a Inko, what? To faint. Mitsuki saw that and screamed. Mitsuki, Inko. While he lifted her up and carried her to an armchair. It was a very tragic night for Izuku's close people. It was a tragic night in Japan. One of the students who has proven to be more heroic than the top heroes themselves has died. The people who were saved by him could not believe he died. Most of them have families and are grateful to him because even when he was in a fight he noticed if there was no one around the place, and if there was, he prioritized the lives of the citizens over his own. Something that undoubtedly earned his fame, apart from the YouTube videos of the epic moments that were recorded by people before running for their lives. The name Deku always resonated in the places. But now, the news of his death came out and the lives of the passengers on the plane were more important than his own. He directed a plane to crash in a place where there were no people. This shows that the lives of citizens are more important than his own. Many heroes decided to go to Island to look for the body of the hero so that he could return to Japan and have a deserved burial. People who were saved by him went to the airports to be able to travel to Island, which they could not do since only heroes or scientists go there. Some begged to be allowed to go and help in the search for his body, but they could not. He always told them, "You have to have an invitation from someone from the Island." This discouraged most people, so they decided to wait for news that his body would be found. They would wait patiently to be able to have a burial worthy of a hero like him. In a hidden bar, a few people were seen celebrating, and apparently the reason for their celebration was the death of the student Izuku Midoriya aka Deku. They planned everything, the murder of the pilots and the explosion of a plane wing, but everything did not go as they wanted since they also wanted The symbol of peace, to die, but as they say, not everything goes as planned. In a hospital on Island. It was 5 p.m. and a body was seen on a stretcher connected to tubes that helped him breathe, while another machine was seen showing his vital signs. The body had several wounds and dried blood on it. It had green hair that used to be a light green that made everyone who knew that hair happy, but now it was an opaque sign of death that if you see it, it makes you instantly depressed. But, do you want to know why Izuku is on a stretcher? Flash black 12 hours ago. The heroes who were on Island were where the plane crashed. Behind them were AM, Nehire, Mirio, Tamaki, and Eri. Well, Eri rather followed them secretly since they did not want to take her, so they left her in a hospital to be checked to see if she did not suffer anything when she landed with Mirio. When he followed them, he stopped at a store that was showing TV and passed Izuku's message to Eri. Izuku, Eri, if you hear this, I'm sorry I can't be with you anymore. I know I promised to show you Island, but I don't think I'll be able to see you become a heroine. But I want you to know that wherever I am, I'll always be protecting you. Bye, my girl. When the video ended, a reporter came out talking about the accident, while the people who were there lamented about the little girl. While Eri couldn't hold back and ran as fast as she could to the beach with tears in her eyes, and they will ask me how she knows where the beach is. Easy, there are helicopters filming from above and many people go to be able to help. On the beach. There were a lot of people moving debris from the plane to find the green-haired boy's body, but no one could find him. It was as if he was missing. AM was desperately looking for him, promised to protect him, and now he was looking for his body to give him a burial. First he saw his teacher die, now his pupil, successor and someone he loved like a son. He was dead. While looking for him, tears fell from his eyes. He whispered, please, please, where are you, Midoriya Shonen, but he couldn't find anything, until he saw a photo where he was with Izuku. The photo was a little burned, but you could see that the two were outside the UA, and below it said, "First day at UA." AM hugged him to her chest and cried silently, whispering sorry for not being able to protect him. She regretted not holding him and letting him fall with her. Her cries ended when she heard a hero. "Hero, here he is," he shouted, calling everyone's attention. "I found his body. Quickly help me so I can get him out of here," he shouted so they could help him, since the body was under the rubble. The others came out of shock and went to help him. AM, who was in his skeleton form, went into his breast form to be able to lift the heavier rubble. When they finished taking him out, they could see that he had more than third-degree burns. His body had pieces of metal embedded in it, something that the doctors were willing to remove and cover up his wounds that were still bleeding. His body was covered in dried blood. When Nehire saw him, she covered her mouth to stifle a scream and fell to the floor while crying. She had only known him for a few weeks and they got along like lifelong friends. They had almost the same tastes and he was the third person who didn't feel uncomfortable when she asked him. She wanted to meet him, know more about him, but there he is lying on the floor while they cleaned his wounds so they could take him to the hospital. Tamaki saw Nehire and hugged her, something that Nehire reciprocated. It didn't seem to affect her, but his face was shadowed so that no one would see him cry. It was a few weeks and they got along great. They were both shy and intelligent, which led them to have some debates, but now he can no longer debate until he is tired, because when he debated the others got bored and left. He was the only one who didn't get bored. Mirio was the worst he was going through. He saw his teacher die, who taught him most of being a hero and who was like a father to him. He believed in him. He knew that he would go further with his quirk, and he said that he would save all the people who were within his reach, and Sir was within his reach and he couldn't save him. Before dying, Sir told him to save everyone and to help Izuku on his way, to never let him do stupid things. Those were his last words as he closed his eyes with a smile. Hey, how ironic it was that life promised to protect him and died. It let Sir down and didn't keep its promise to protect him. The image of an Izuku smiling while crying kept repeating in his mind before opening the parachute and grabbing Eri so she wouldn't suffer the impact of the fall. Well, friends, here comes the hard part. No one saw a little girl running to Izuku's body. When they saw her, they were going to take her out and move her away. AM, Nehire, Mirio and Tamaki were surprised since they left the little girl in the hospital. She escaped. The three of them thought when they were going to take her out they heard her scream, "Eri, get away. He's my dad." That baffled everyone, except the three of them. Was he a young father? He neglected himself? And the mother? Were the questions of the people who saw her with sadness. The young man died leaving his daughter alone, without a father. "Eri, Dad, please wake up," she asked with her teary eyes, causing the people to just stay quiet because of the innocence of the girl who was trying to wake up her father. "Come on, Daddy, wake up. Come on, open your eyes," she said while shaking him slowly while her little eyes had more tears. "You promised me that we were going to go for a walk. You told me that you would be by my side. Come on, Daddy," while she put her head on Izuku's body. His body was cleaned, and his little horn grew and a yellow light came out. "Come on, wake up daddy please," she screamed so that Izuku's body would be wrapped in the yellow light and his wounds would be closed little by little. Everyone was amazed and some who were recording since Eri began to speak were surprised since Izuku's wounds were closing, and then Eri fainted hugging her father. Elsewhere, a dark space was seen in which Izuku appeared confused. "Izuku, where am I looking everywhere confused?" He was dead and now appeared in a white space. He was going to continue analyzing the place when a voice spoke. "It's not your time yet, go out and keep saving people," said a mysterious voice. Izuku saw where the voice was going and saw the 7 former Ofa bearers. Izuku was going to speak but the first guy touched his forehead and disappeared. "Nana, what a stupid boy, dying and leaving his daughter alone," she said with disappointment, and everyone saw her with a drop of sweat that she noticed. "Sixth bearer, you are not one to speak," said the bald man, something he instantly regretted. "Nana, do you want to die?" he said threateningly, making everyone sweat from nerves. "Fourth, but if we are already dead you can't kill us again," he said victoriously but trembled when he heard how Nana snapped her fingers. "Nan, run," had just said it so everyone would run and Nana would chase them. On the beach. When they saw Izuku's healed body, the doctors ran to check his pulse and were surprised when they could feel it, and without wasting time he screamed, "Doctor, quick, get a stretcher. His pulse is weak, if we don't take him to the emergency room we could lose him," he said so that AM could carefully take his body and rush to a hospital. Everyone saw the girl as a heroine since she was able to save someone from death, and that was at such a young age, apart from the fact that everything was recorded. Elsewhere, AM arrived with Izuku's body to a hospital and screamed, "AM, a stretcher please," he shouted for a nurse to go with a stretcher and gently put him on the stretcher. When she put him on the stretcher, AM fell to the ground breathing heavily while turning into his Falcao version. "Nurse, sir, stay here, we will take care of you from now on," she said when several doctors arrived and saw that his pulse was weak and took him to the emergency room immediately. AM went to a seat and stayed to wait while Mirio, Nehire, Tamaki, who was with Eri asleep with her tears dried, arrived. "Nehire, and Izuku. Where is he?" she screamed upset, to which they had to calm her down. "AM, calm down, Hato Shoujo Midoriya Shonen is in an emergency. Thanks to little Eri, Midoriya Shonen is alive," he said in a low voice with a smile while watching Eri sleep, repeating, "Daddy." 5 hours later, the search lasted 7 hours. 5 hours passed and there was no news of Izuku. When Nehire was sleeping on the seat, Tamaki was leaning on the wall, Mirio was sitting repeating the image of Izuku when he was dead, and AM was walking back and forth, when they saw the doctor come out and asked him how he was, and he said, "Doctor, he is in a coma." The day after that crazy day, we found ourselves at the Shield House where AM, Nehire, Mirio, Tamaki and Eri went to stay, who was hugging a green rabbit stuffed animal. They were having breakfast since they will go to the hospital later, but now Melissa Shield and David Shield are going to see Izuku. Although the atmosphere was depressing since no one was talking, they were just concentrating on eating. Melissa had finished her breakfast and went to bring clothes since she would stay at Izuku's since they were afraid that the villains would try to kill Izuku while he was in a coma. She was getting her things ready and some other inventions to be able to protect herself from an attack. Melissa already had everything ready and left her room, running into a pink-haired girl with a horn who was holding a book until she raised her face and saw Melissa. "Oh, hello Melissa, where are you going?" he said and asked the pink-haired girl with little red horns. Melissa, "Oh Zero, I see you've already left the studio, but to answer your question, I'm going to take care of a friend who's in a coma," she said as she looked at her bag to see if she forgot anything. "Zero, what a shame for the boy, I hope he's okay," he said as he turned around and went to his room. "Hey, by the way Melissa," he said to get her attention, "what's the boy's name?" he asked. She didn't know why but she had to ask. "Melissa, his name is Midoriya Izuku, but I call him Deku out of affection," she said so that Zero would stop moving. Everything around him stopped time and he saw a small flashback. Flashback. 2 children are seen running on a tree that was broken in half. "Izuku, go slower," said a girl with pink hair. She had red skin and many people called her a monster, even her parents kicked her out of the house because they didn't love her. "Izuku, nope, you have to catch up with me, Zero-chan," said little Izuku, making the girl pout cutely. "Zero, Izuku baka," he said and then continued running trying to catch up with him. End of flashback. Zero, T has green hair. He turned to look at her with tears trying to escape from his eyes. "Melissa, yes," she said confused as she found the girl's attitude strange. "Zero, see, can I go with you?" she said, wiping away her tears and speaking a little excitedly. "Melissa, eh?" Sure, you can go, but bring some clothes since we're going to stay in the hospital for a while. 0. Sure, she said excitedly as she ran to get her clothes ready. We'll see each other again, darling. At UA. Class 1A and 1B were depressed, and how could they not be if they heard that their friend saved many people but cost his life? They were all in the common room watching the news. If something happened, nobody said anything, everyone was quiet, only hearing the news, and if you looked at the eyes of most of the girls, they were empty as if they lost their light that represented each one of them. The men were just quiet, their eyes were a little dull but still there was a light in their eyes. They must be strong since they know that Izuku wouldn't like them to be like that. In fact, if he saw them how they were, it would be more likely that he would scold them for the mess in the common room. Since it was a mess, there were ice cream tubs lying around and dirty plates everywhere, and if you're wondering where the teachers are, they are trying to contact Island to find out if they can go look for their student's body. Everything that happened in the previous chapter has not yet appeared in the news. And Mommy Caterpillar is depressed, and how could she not be if he sleeps in class to protect his students? He is easy to wake up, so if there is an explosion or signs of attack he wakes up instantly. She promised to take care of him, and what happened? In the end he died. Professor Snipe was watching television to see if there was any news until a news channel caught his attention, so he called the other teachers. Snipe, hey! He said, drawing the attention of the others. They are broadcasting news about Midoriya-san, so everyone should go to him and see what they said. Reporter, good morning Japan, she said with excitement, to which many others did not like because of the excitement, but before changing the channel she said, today I bring news of Izuku Midoriya aka Deku, she said, making everyone watch television all over Musetafu, or if they were not at home they look at their cell phones. Reporter, we received a video from Island of a miracle, she said while smiling with some tears, saved by Izuku and a friend not so close but they do talk from time to time. Video. Many heroes who went to Island and other citizens were shown removing debris and putting out the fire that was in some parts. Until a hero's cry was heard. Hero, I found it, he shouted to get the attention of the others. Help me remove the rubble, he said, so that several heroes could help him by carefully removing rubble by rubble. They were able to remove the rubble until they found the lifeless body of the hero Deku. The hero who screamed carefully lifted him while taking him to some paramedics to check him out. When they cleaned up and gave the verdict that he was dead, the place fell silent. Outside, the teachers were frozen. They saw the corpse of their student covered in blood and said that he was dead. The students, 1A and 1B, could not bear it and began to cry while the girls, all 7, hugged each other. If before their eyes were dull, now they were empty as if there was nothing in their once beautiful eyes. Inko and Mitsuki, the first, was in a trance, remembering the moments she lived with her son since he was a baby until before entering the UA. Mitsuki was crying while hugging her friend. She saw little Izuku grow the same since he was little and she had a great appreciation for him. She loved him as if he were her blood nephew. Where the League of Villains were celebrating one of their biggest problems died, now AM would be heartbroken and the UA will have to hold a funeral, where they would take advantage to kill all the heroes and destroy that academy. Video. Nobody saw a little girl running to Izuku's body. When they saw her they were going to take her out and move her away. AM, Nehire, Mirio and Tamaki were surprised since they left the little girl in the hospital. She escaped. The 3 of them thought when they were going to take her out they heard her scream. Eri, get away. He's my dad. That baffled everyone, except the 3 of them. Was he a young father? He neglected himself? And the mother? Were the questions of the people who saw her with sadness. The young man died leaving his daughter alone, without a father. Eri, Dad, please wake up, she asked with her teary eyes, causing the people to just stay quiet because of the innocence of the girl who was trying to wake up her father. Come on Daddy, wake up, come on, open your eyes, she said while shaking him slowly while her little eyes had more tears. You promised me that we were going to go for a walk, you told me that you would be by my side, come on Daddy. While she put her head on Izuku's body, his body was cleaned, and his little horn grew and a yellow light came out. Come on, wake up Daddy please, she screamed so that Izuku's body would be wrapped in the yellow light and his wounds would be closed little by little. Everyone was amazed and some who were recording since Eri began to speak were surprised since Izuku's wounds were closing, and then Eri fainted hugging her father. The doctors checked Izuku's body and saw that he was alive. Every cell in his body had been resurrected but his pulse was weak, so they needed an ambulance, but it was too far away and it was possible that he would die again before reaching the hospital. So AM took him in his arms and jumped in the direction of a hospital. Outside, spirits in Japan lifted when they heard he was alive, and tears and thanks for the girl were not long in coming. Inko had tears in her eyes seeing her son alive, thanks to her granddaughter, even though she is not blood, but she still loved her as if she were blood. The UA students hugged each other with tears but now with happiness, since they saw that their friend is alive. The girls thanked their niece for saving the life of their friend/boyfriend, now they had a chance to be with him, foolish ones. The villains were cursing the girl for bringing back life. Tomura, damn girl, weeks planning the death of one of the two and now that girl ruined it, he said while disintegrating a table with a fury, since they had to infiltrate and plan everything, but a voice took him out of his fury. "Foe, don't be upset Shigaraki," he said with a calm voice. Shigaraki, but sensei, that girl, he said furiously pointing at the little girl. "Foe, I'm upset too Shigaraki, but you're forgetting something," he said while a laugh formed on his face. Shigaraki, "What's wrong sensei?" he said a little calmer, since if his sensei was like that it was because he had something planned. "Foe, he is weakened and it is more likely that he is in a coma since his body is very weak and his soul must be in limbo. He will decide whether to continue in this world or go to rest," he said with a smile, calming Shigaraki and making a smile form on his face. Shigaraki, then. "I'll leave the plant in the air for you to complete it." "Kurogiri, we might have a chance to kill him while he's in a coma," he said, making everyone smile and plan the attack. "Things are going to get difficult now that Izuku is in a coma, apart from that he will have to decide if his soul will rest or continue fighting for innocent people. We will have to see that in the future. If you're wondering why Izuku is in limbo, it's because only a piece of his soul went to his body, the rest was about to enter eternal rest," but Irie's voice hurt him. "Because as some people say, when one dies the sense of hearing continues to function." After seeing the news, Japan was calmer, now they knew that their hero was alive, thanks to his daughter. But that doesn't matter. We go to the Midoriya house where Inko and Mitsuki were seen arguing. Mitsuki, but Inko thinks about Izuku, how will he feel knowing that his mother wants to prohibit his dream? She said, trying to get Inko to see reason. Inko, no Mitsuki, I almost lost my son and this is not the first time this has happened, she said as she got ready to go to the airport and ask for a ticket to Ai Island. Mitsuki, so, you would have preferred that Izuku be saved and the plane crash killing hundreds of people? Asked Mitsuki. Inko just stared at him but didn't say anything and left the house. Mitsuki, when he saw her leave, just let out a sigh and put on his shoes to leave the house, but not before locking the house. In the House of the Shields. All the occupants of the house were seen ready to leave and go to the hospital, but they were waiting for Zero to drop. "Zero, I'm ready now," she said with excitement. The others nodded and went to the car to go to the hospital. When they were going to the hospital, Nahir asked a question. "Nahir, this?" she said while looking at Zero, trying to know his name. "Zero, excuse me for not introducing myself before, my name is Zero too," she said calmly. The others found the name strange, something that Zero noticed, and replied, "He, my name was given to me by Izu," she said while they looked at her strangely for how she called her Izuku and why Izuku gave her a name. Shouldn't her parents be in charge of that? "Zero, he gave it to me when he found me lying next to a tree," she said while looking out the window. The others looked at her in surprise. "Nahir, but what about your parents?" she asked, to which Zero became sad when he remembered it. Nahir noticed it and apologized. Sorry, she said shyly. "Zero, don't worry," he said with a smile. "In the end I never lacked affection," which was with him, said Minoru, closed her eyes and remembered. Flashback. Izuku, hey, are you okay? Little Izuku asked curiously. "Zero, and no," he said while trembling and walking away from Izuku. "Izuku, why?" he asked as he sat next to her. "Zero, my parents abandoned me because I'm a monster," she said while revealing her red skin and face with horns. She thought that Izuku was going to get scared and call someone, so she was going to leave, but a voice stopped her. "Izuku, wow, your horns are real?" he asked with stars in his eyes. "Zero, why yes," he said with confusion, since he thought I was going to tell him that he was a monster. "Izuku, oh sorry, my name is Midoriya Izuku," he said as he stopped playing his horns and stood up while extending his little hand. "Zero, I don't have a name," he said sadly, to which Izuku began to think until he was told innocently. "Izuku, so what do you think of Zero too?" he asked, to which Zero looked at him with a confused face. Izuku realized and was going to apologize, but Zero smiled and spoke. "Zero, then I'll be called Zero, Zero too," he said as he took her hand and smiled at her. End of flashback. "Zero, he was my first friend," she said while the others looked at her. "Tamaki, then why did you disappear?" he asked while stuttering from nervousness, as everyone looked at them. "Zero, I didn't disappear, they took me," he said as he prepared to tell them, although he was afraid of remembering his past, something that David noticed. "David, if you don't want to say it, don't say it. They're not forcing you to tell your past," he said as he looked at her in the rearview mirror. "Zero, I'm fine, he said as he prepared himself and sighed. My life was not the best. When I was born my body was red and I had horns, he said as he looked out the window. Nay higher, so those horns are real? I asked excitedly like a girl in a candy store. Zero, yes, they are real, he said, making Nehire scream, but she is silenced by Mirio's hand. Mirio, please be quiet, Nehire, he said while smiling, but that smile went away as Nehire licked his hand, causing him to die. He will immediately remove his hand, Nehire, Mirio scolded. Nehire, that's for putting your hand out, she said while pouting. Everyone looked at them with a drop of sweat. Zero, cough cough cough, calling the attention of the others. Can I continue, I asked Mirio, and Nehire, who blushed with shame, nodded their heads. Well, where did it all start? My parents, when they saw me born, thought I was a monster and that's why they didn't want me. They say they tried to put me up for adoption, but the adoption people didn't want me. They never gave me a name and therefore they treated me badly, until I got tired of their mistreatment and left home at age 6, he explained while the others watched with shame. Zero, I ran as fast as I could at that moment until I was able to find a tree cut in half. That was my home for a long time. I had to steal in order to survive, until one day he came and offered me his hand. He smiled at me like no one had ever smiled at me before. Zero, he gave me a name, although he said it as a joke. I liked my name, so I decided to keep the name Zero too. We have been through countless things together, he said while smiling, remembering the time when the two of them played without being discriminated against. Zero, until one day, he said as his smile faded. A boy called his mother when he saw me. I tried to run but the heroes had caught up with me. I tried to hide in fear but they grabbed me and knocked me out. When I woke up I saw that I was in a dog cage on a plane, he said as he began to tremble. Melissa, who was at his side, noticed that he was trembling and just hugged him. Melissa, calm down, I whispered as I stroked her head. Zero calmed down a bit and thanked Melissa for calming her down. Zero, well, let's continue since I'm calmer, she said while wiping away some tears and smiling. I realized that I was on Island since they announced it on the speakers that the planes have. I was scared since I didn't know who they were going to be with me, so when we got off the plane I broke the box and tried to escape but they caught me. Zero, but before they took me, I met Mr. David, who saved me from the possible hell that I was going to go through, she said while smiling gratefully at David. David also smiled. Nehire, in short, she said while everyone paid attention to them, you left your home because of the mistreatment of your parents. You lived for a while stealing. You found Izuku. Izuku gave you a name. They tried to experiment on you for being a monster, she said while making quotation marks around monster. You were saved by the most famous scientist in all of Island, David Shield, she said, finishing making a summary. David, and don't forget that I love her like a daughter, since I taught her to speak better, and that she can write, he said with a smile, to which Zero just smiled and hugged him by the neck. I mean, he hugged her neck, as if he were now walking from behind, but she does it with love XD. Apart from that, I know where her diary is and how she writes that she is going to rape. He didn't finish since Zero put more force in the hug, therefore he was strangling him, but with a smile. Zero, I think I told you that you shouldn't read my diary, right? He said as he felt himself trying to free himself from the grip. The others had to intervene because if not he would end up crashing. After freeing David from his possible death at the hands of Zero, he asked for forgiveness and they were finally able to reach the hospital where Izuku was hospitalized. Zero, I'm nervous, Dojo in a whisper, but it was heard by everyone, so they decided to ask. Nehire, why Zero? She asked first of all as they began to walk to the hospital. Zero, what if I forgot? He asked uncertainly as they arrived at the room where Izuku was. I assure you that he never forgot you, he said as they entered the room. Every time he finished training he told me that he had to leave because he had something important to do. One of those days I got curious about where he was going, so I followed him and saw how he sat waiting in that tree until very late, he said as he watched his successor breathing with the help of a machine. Zero's face filled with tears when he heard this and he went to Izuku's bed to hug him carefully. The others watched the scene with emotion. After that moment the seven started talking while Zero peeled an apple and gave food to Izuku. And so a week of visits to Izuku passed. Although Izuku showed no signs of waking up, the doctors told them that his body was slowly regenerating its wounds. Monday of the other week. Monday was going to be an ordinary day in which they visited Izuku, but he never showed any signs of waking up, something that depressed them but did not take away their hope that he could wake up. The seven of them were gathered together talking calmly until they heard an explosion in the hospital, so they had to go out to see and they saw that there were more than 10 high-end class Nomus, Muscular, Kurogiri and Shigaraki who had a psychopathic smile. Everyone rushed to fight and... I don't feel like writing a fight, so I'll leave it for the next chapter? They saw everything destroyed and the bodies of 4 Nomus on the ground dead and the heroes tired from fighting. The fight had to be moved to the center of the city so that the hospital would not suffer damage from the fights. At this moment a muscular man was seen in front of an Eri sitting on the floor in fear, since the muscular man's hand was approaching her head to crush it. "Eri, please daddy save me," she said while tears came out of her eyes and she closed her eyes tightly. Eri expected him to lift her off the ground but was surprised to open her eyes and see a muscular man covering himself with both arms from a punch that sent him flying. Eri saw the person who owned the fist and saw her dad, so with a smile while crying she hugged her dad. Izuku, feeling the hug on his leg, turned off the OFA and smiled at him while caressing his head. "Izuku, you're safe now, Eri-chan," he said as he heard his daughter say. "Eri, you woke up, Dad, you finally woke up," she said while crying with happiness like the others. "Izuku, yes my girl, your dad has already woken up, now go and try to heal the others while daddy takes care of the bad men," he said while Eri looked at him and wiped her tears to nod and give him a kiss on the cheek before running away. "Izuku, now," he said watching as Muscular barely got up as he felt his arms were broken. "They will pay for hurting my precious people and trying to kill my daughter," he said as he activated 100% of the OFA. When he activated it, his body was filled with rays to the point where only his white eyes were showing. Izuku saw the remaining Nomas coming at him, so he prepared himself and you can see Izuku standing with his eyes closed. It seems like he is deciding something, and in front of him there seemed to be a path with flowers and it looked very colorful, and they wonder what Izuku is doing in this place. Well, Izuku is choosing whether to stay in paradise, a place where his loved ones are, where there is peace and there are no battles or crimes, in short, the place that true heroes want to have on Earth. Izuku looked back and saw the Earth, a place that was corrupted by heroes who only seek fame and money, not to mention politicians, a place inhabited by both heroes and villains, the place that suffered a lot. Izuku chose to make the decision that seemed right to him, and that was to go to rest, so he walked slowly to the entrance of paradise, and when he was about to enter a hand stopped him. "Are you going to leave everything you fought for and then rest?" asked the voice that Izuku recognized instantly, so he turned around and saw his father, Hisashi Midoriya. Izuku, seeing him, pushed him, causing him to fall on his back. Hisashi just saw him and was shedding tears while looking at him with a frown on his face. "Izuku, you abandoned us, you left Okasan with all the burden. Did you hate me for being quirkless?" he yelled, venting what he had kept inside for a long time, apart from the fact that Izuku was saying it without thinking since they were practically in limbo. Hisashi, hearing this, just lowered his head but got up and hugged him, listening to his screams while he returned the hug crying.
"Hisashi, I didn't want to abandon them," he said while listening to Izuku calm down.
"Izuku, and then why did you leave?" he said a little calmer without stopping hugging him. Hisashi, I think you're distracted, son," he said, to which Izuku separated and remembered that they were in limbo. "Izuku, then you are dead," he said with a shocked face, and Hisashi nodded with a smile. "But how?" "Not when you died," he asked, to which Hisashi just sat down while the passage changed to a beautiful landscape. "You're dead," he said with a shocked face, and Hisashi nodded with a smile. "But how?" "Not when you died," he asked, to which Hisashi just sat down while the passage changed to a beautiful landscape. Hisashi just walked until he was in the middle of the bridge. Hisashi indicated that Izuku should sit next to him. Izuku did as he was told and sat next to his father. "Hisashi, before I met your mother I was a bad person, Izuku," he said while watching the water move slowly. "Izuku, what do you mean bad?" he asked, a little upset, since he always thought his father was a good person. "Hisashi, do you remember when I told you about the fire dragon mercenary?" he said while Izuku nodded. "Izuku, yes, you told me that he was the vigilante most feared by the heroes and that he was very powerful," he said while remembering the times his father told him before going to sleep. "Hisashi, and if I told you that guard? You're looking at him," he said while watching Izuku standing still. "Izuku, then Yohei stuttered as he looked at his father. "Hisashi, if I am good, I was the fire dragon watchman," he said while looking at his son who was obviously excited. "Izuku, then why didn't you say it before? I'm one of your Gana," he said while looking at his father who looked at him with a smile. "Izuku, I didn't tell you since it was more than likely that you would have said it at school," he said, to what Izuku was going to speak. "Just like the time I gave you that puppy and I told you that I shouldn't tell anyone and almost everyone found out," he said while Izuku pouted. Hisashi saw his son's pout and laughed, to which Izuku only pouted even bigger. "Hisashi, oh. I haven't had this for a long time," he said while wiping away some tears that came from laughing. "Izuku, back to the topic," he said while becoming serious, but Hisashi found it cute. Why didn't you come home?" he asked while lowering his head to shed some tears. "Hisashi, I wanted to go home," he said while watching the sunset. Izuku, how? While he looked around and now they were on a hill watching the sunset. Hizashi, he, I had the same reaction as you the first time. We can alter time here, apart from not feeling sleepy, hungry or thirsty, he said to see how Izuku was looking at the landscape. Izuku, wow, he said, so, what stopped you from coming back with us, he said without stopping to watch the sunset. Hizashi, before my retirement as a vigilante, but now as one of those who did good, it was that or your mother killing me, I said a little amused and with a shiver. Izuku just let out a small smile. I faced a foe making Izuku look at him seriously. That time I joined with Toshinori and Nana, he said while watching the sun set, and it was nighttime. Oh, making Izuku look at him seriously. That time I joined with Toshinori and Nana, he said while watching the sun set, and it was nighttime. Hizashi, come on, let's go to my house, then it gets cold and we can talk more comfortably there, he said as he stood up and watched Izuku stand up for them to go to the house. When they entered, Izuku was impressed by the room. He went to sit on the armchair to wait for his father, who was in the kitchen. Hizashi came out of the kitchen with cookies and 2 cups of coffee. He put it on the table and sat in front of Izuku. Izuku, Dad, you know about him. I didn't finish saying it since Hizashi said. Hizashi, about the Ofa, about Toshinori being the 8th bearer? Or that the Ofa was created to destroy a foe and that you are the 9th bearer of the Ofa, if that's what you're referring to. Yes, I know, he said without interest while eating a cookie and drinking his coffee. Izuku, how, I asked while looking at him impressed. Hizashi, I see everything from here, son. I saw how they mistreated you. Izuku lowered his head and Hizashi clenched his fists. Also how you met AM, and when he comes I'm going to kick his ass for telling you that he can't be a hero without a quirk and then telling you that you can, he said seriously while Izuku laughed nervously. On Earth. An Inko was seen frowning while AM was seen with his slim form in front of Inko while he was kneeling. Inko, I've already decided, after Izuku wakes up I'll take him out of the UA, she said to turn around and go to the hospital, leaving the place in an overwhelming silence. Toshinori, he said while having a chill down his spine. With Izuku and Hizashi. Hizashi, I've seen everything, son. I've also been Nana's student and she told me about the Ofa just like Toshinori, he said while looking at Izuku. I asked him if I could train with Toshinori, he said. Izuku, so you saw that too? He said while seeing his reflection in the coffee. Hizashi, yes. I've seen it, he said while looking at Izuku.
Izuku, I thought they loved me, even if it was just one, he said as he began to tear up.
Hizashi, yes, but apparently it was an unrequited love, he said as he stood up and hugged his son who was crying on his father's shoulder. The two hugged each other until Izuku calmed down and walked away from his father while wiping away his tears. Izuku, thank you, he whispered as he wiped his cheeks from crying a lot. Hizashi, you're welcome, son, he said while stroking his head and smiling at him. Izuku looked at him for a while and hugged him. Izuku, I miss you so much, Dad, I miss you so much, he said while Hizashi also hugged him. Hizashi, me too, son, I miss you so much, he said as the two hugged each other and fell silent again. The two were hugging each other until they separated and the house changed to the place where Izuku was before. Hizashi, it's time, son, you have to decide where you want to be. In paradise, he said while pointing to the beautiful place while Izuku's family appeared, or the earth while the earth appeared. Izuku stood still with his eyes closed until he decided to walk towards paradise. Once he is inside paradise, his body will stop breathing and the soul that is waiting for the return of the others will remain in the Ofa and will pass to the former bearer.
Izuku, I want to stop suffering and be able to rest, he said while his deceased little cousin greeted him with one hand while smiling. Izuku walked and remembered all the mistreatment he received at his old school. Izuku smiled and was about to enter until a voice was heard throughout the place. I miss you, Dad, please wake up so we can play, said the voice of a tender girl, but her voice sounded like she was crying. Izuku stopped about to enter the portal while Hizashi watched him while smiling. Izuku. Iri-chan, said Izuku as he remembered his daughter of about 7 years old. He remembered that he had not yet fulfilled the promise of finding Zero. He remembered how a woman a few years older than him helped him and sometimes they went out to eat, his friends that he made at UA, and he could not forget the person who supported him apart from his father, Inko Midoriya, his mother, the person who has fought to get ahead. He remembered the promise he made to himself as a child, which was to help his mother, to make her rest and live comfortably, to give back everything she did for him, and to take care of her as he had taken care of her when he was little. Hizashi smiled but instantly changed his smile to one of surprise. Hizashi, Izuku, I called his son to see him. They are attacking the hospital where you are, he said, to which Izuku quickly approached where he was. Izuku, what's happening? He said as Hizashi opened a portal of sorts where AM, Nehire, Tamaki, Mirio and 02 were seen killing the low-class Nomus.
but after finishing off the low-class Nomas they faced off against the high-class ones. They were stronger and faster, they did not manage to get just 5, adding the help of Melissa who went to look for her inventions. The heroes who were around helped. But they couldn't do more since Muscular appeared, killing a few heroes and leaving others with serious injuries. Muscular went to where the 6 were and went one after another defeating them, until he arrived with AM, who incredibly defeated him. There was something muscular about him that made him stronger than before. Izuku watched angrily as what was happening, but his rage exploded when he saw how muscular he approached Eri. He saw her little face, he was scared and he could hear whispers coming out of her mouth. "Dad, where are you?" Izuku saw Hisashi with a serious face and then went to where the entrance to paradise was and saw his entire family smiling, although his cousins were a little discouraged for not being able to play with him like they used to play. "Izuku, I'm sorry," he said as he knelt on one knee, "but they need me," he said with his head down, waiting for an insult for preferring them over his family. "Grandma, don't worry, my son, we know that they are important to you, so go and save them. We can wait," she said while grabbing Izuku's shoulder, who shed a few tears. "Izuku, hi, I appreciate it," he said as he stood up and said goodbye to his family to run towards the Earth Gate. "Cousin, he has become more handsome than the last time I saw him," said a well-developed 20-year-old girl. "Cousin, please don't start," he said while sighing. On Earth, Izuku was seen waking up, so he quickly disconnected the cables he had on his body and put on his clothes since he was only wearing a robe. Izuku had changed, and when he left the hospital that was destroyed he saw his daughter about to be taken by the head by Muscular. Izuku activated 10% of the OFA and ran towards Muscular to pass to 100% in his right arm, hitting Muscular, who covered himself instantly and flew out. Izuku looked around and saw Zero, a little hurt, but he was excited to see her again. And how did he realize it was Zero? He could tell by the horns she was wearing. Izuku looked down as he felt something clinging to his leg and saw his daughter, so he turned off the OFA and bent down to hug her. "You know what they say, so I'll skip it." Izuku had entered a phase where rage was his greatest driving force, so he charged towards the high-class Nomas, who had no time to react, and some were strangled by whips that came out of Izuku. Izuku didn't say anything as he looked at his hands to clench his fist as if he was squeezing something in his hand. When he did that action, the whips began to strangle the 3 Nomas, who instantly died from lack of oxygen. Izuku saw the other 2 leftover Nomas that were flying. The 2 Nomas shot out at Izuku only to end up burned by a black fire that burned them until they were ashes. Izuku turned his gaze to where Muscular was sent. The rocks were moving, revealing a muscular man coming out with his active fibers, but now they were metal. "Ha ha ha, I concentrated on seeing universes and almost forgot about this fic. I think I'll write the next chapter." Did you like it? Izuku had a northern cousin? The city of Island was seen destroyed. Izuku was looking at a fixed place while behind him were AM, Tamaki, Mirio, Nehire, Eri and Zero with tears in their eyes seeing him awake. But their concentration didn't last long as they saw Muscular come out of the rubble that was sent by Izuku. "Muscular, ha ha ha, you finally woke up. I thought I had to kill that brat, but since you're awake now, it'll be time for my revenge," he said with a face full of madness, and then disappeared and appeared behind Izuku preparing his fist with a metal muscle fiber. Izuku glanced at Muscular about to land his fist on his back. He had to dodge it since his body was not 100%, and that means he has to end this fight quickly. Izuku, after finishing his thoughts, turned around and with the OFA at 50% he collided his right fist with Muscular's, creating a crater under them and a strong gust of wind. Muscular's strength had increased and Izuku felt it as he felt his arm break. Muscular, at the moment of Izuku's distraction, used more force, sending him flying into the rubble, causing a layer of dust to rise. Muscular waited a while but saw that he didn't come out, so he just laughed, thinking that he had won. Then he looked back and saw AM and the others, so he went after them. AM went into his muscle mode and stopped a blow that was going to little Eri. AM with effort was able to throw him into the air. Tamaki, who at that moment had the power to turn his arm into that of an octopus, so with a small jump he wrapped his tentacle around the muscle's body to forcefully throw him to the ground, creating a crater. AM and Tamaki were tired, as they had just recovered a little, but their peace lasted a little when they saw Muscular come out of the crater as if nothing had happened. Nehire began to levitate with her waves and sent them to Muscular, who felt nothing as he had his metal body. Muscular was going to attack them, but suddenly he felt a pressure that made most of them unable to move. Everyone looked where he felt strongest and saw Izuku come out, but suddenly they could see a guy in a dark green rabbit suit who had a young black-haired boy in his arms. The image they saw faded away so that Izuku disappeared. Muscular, who felt a little scared, began to cover himself with metallic muscle fiber as he looked everywhere looking for him, until he felt a terrifying presence behind him. Biel. The image they saw faded away so that Izuku disappeared. Muscular, who felt a little scared, began to cover himself with metallic muscle fiber while he looked everywhere looking for him, until he felt a terrifying presence behind him, so he quickly turned around, seeing Deku with his fist about to hit Muscular. Muscular tried to protect himself, but it was no use, as Izuku's power had momentarily increased, causing him to pass through the fiber as if it were simple paper until his fist hit his face, breaking Muscular's nose apart from sending him flying and leaving him in the world of dreams. Izuku stopped using the Ofa and stood there while the clouds parted to let sunlight fall on Izuku, making his body full of wounds stand out, and minutes later he fell unconscious, scaring the others who had been impressed by the display of power. AM was serious when he saw the image of that guy, and if his senses did not fail him, he must be Izuku. Helicopters, firefighters and ambulances arrived at the scene looking for injured people and putting out the fires caused by the fight. An ambulance went to check on Izuku. Zero was with his hand holding Izuku's, watching with concern as the nurses checked his pulse. "Nurse, he's stable, he just needs a rest since he just woke up," he said, making Zero just say thank you and smile with tears while his head rested on Izuku's forehead. The battle was over and the winner was Midoriya Izuku, a hero student who had defeated a villain for the first time, who could bring AM to his knees, or well, that's what they thought, believing it was Izuku's first fight with this type of villains. But we don't care about that. But Izuku was already waking up after a week, but not in a coma, but because of the exhaustion he had to use to face Muscular, although Zero has been taking care of him all the time while giving him some fruits to eat. The others had also come, and Eri always lay down next to him, either to sleep or to tell him about some things that had happened, like that she had been learning some things thanks to the teachings of Melissa, Mr. David and Zero, or that she had made many friends. Izuku's room was empty since they had things to do except Zero, but she went to get some apples to peel and give them to Izuku. The bed where the aforementioned was began to move, his right hand began to move and his eyes slowly opened to see another room because they were repairing half of the hospital. Izuku had sat on the stretcher while looking at the serum in his left hand and rubbing his eyes to get used to the light it gave. Then he noticed the door that opened, seeing a Zero standing looking at him with a smile and her eyes shedding tears. Izuku had sat on the stretcher while looking at the serum in his left hand and rubbing his eyes to get used to the light it gave. Then he noticed the door that opened, seeing a Zero standing looking at him with a smile and her eyes spilled. "She is beautiful." After seeing each other for a moment, Zero approached to hug him quite tightly while Izuku hugged him back with tears for seeing his friend again after a long time. It was incredible that after so much time these two friends could be together again. After separating, Zero did something that he wanted to do for a long time, and that was to give him a kiss that shows the love, gratitude, and happiness that Izuku gave and gave her. Every day that passed was a day in which she longed to see him again or just talk. Of course, with social networks she could look for him, but she couldn't because he didn't have Facebook or Instagram accounts, only WhatsApp to be able to talk to his mother and friends. It was enough for him. Although Zero could only see Izuku on the news for some achievements, some photos were not enough for him. He wanted to see him in person, and it could be fulfilled at this moment, and with that he could not resist kissing him. Izuku was shocked and his brain had rebooted from the kiss Zero gave him. He knew that she is the girl from his childhood, because of the help from his father that he was able to show him when he was between life and death. He came out of his thoughts to be able to reciprocate. Izuku, with some strength and a little pain, lifted Zero and put her on his lap while he hugged her by the waist and continued with the kiss. They were kissing for a minute until they separated from the kiss, gasping for air. The two had remained looking at each other until Zero hugged him a little tightly. It hurt Izuku, but he remained silent. He did not want to separate from the hug. "Zero, you don't know how much I missed you," he said in a whisper while tears were still coming out. "Izuku, I've missed you too. Whenever I could I would go to the tree where we first saw each other in the hopes of being able to see you again," she said while smiling and caressing Zero's long pink hair with her right hand. The aforementioned just smiled and stayed in that position for a while. "Zero, I'm going to call the doctor and the others to come," he said as he separated and gave a small kiss to Izuku, who just smiled. The two separated instantly so that Zero could go find a doctor. "Izuku, thank you Father for the help," he said while looking at the ceiling with a smile. "In the farther away, if there is more there, is there less here?" Hisashi was with the rest of his family looking at a cloud that had the image of Izuku in the center. "I forgot to tell you that Hisashi can enter paradise, for acts of kindness." Everyone could see from his awakening to his fight. Of course his cousin wanted to see the moment when Izuku changed, but his brother took her somewhere else so she would stop bothering him. Hisashi was a little serious as he remembered the moment he saw that guy, so he gave his mother the cloud to go talk to his father and brother somewhere else. "Another thing I forgot to tell you is that Hisashi can only be in paradise for 2 hours. If he spends more than that time he will be taken by the souls in pain. It would be the same as the path of the snake. If you fall you are worthless." "Hisashi, and what do you think about what we saw?" he said seriously after being silent for a few minutes. Father, the only thing I can say is that something big is going to happen. For that to happen, said a man just like Hisashi, only with green hair and a little taller. Brother, my nephew will go through a severe change, and I can be sure that he may even change his ideals, said a man with black hair and a little shorter than his father but taller than Hisashi, while remaining silent with his eyes closed. Hisashi, only God will know what will happen in these moments, he said as a silence formed. Sigh. Let's go back, he said as he went to where the others were. When they arrived, they saw Izuku's cousin with a pout and her arms crossed. Hisashi, and what's wrong with him? He asked while looking at his nephew. Cousin, she's like this because that girl kissed little Izuku, he said while looking at her with a drop of sweat. Cousin, it's not fair, I'm the only one who has the right to do that, I claim. Cousin, but they are cousins and he is a minor, he exclaimed. Cousin, and? For love there is no age, she said while smiling proudly. Cousin, and the jail is only a quarter, he said to start fighting with his sister. The other members of the family watched this with a drop of sweat, and why didn't they say anything about the girl's appreciation for Izuku? It's easy, she's been like this since she saw him as a baby and it's become something normal for them. Let's go back to Izuku. Izuku was chatting with Zero and the doctor about how his body felt when he moved it and stuff, until the door opened showing, everyone went to greet them, and in Tamaki's case he hugged him and gave him a slap on the head telling him that he scared him. Izuku just laughed a little as the doctor left the room telling him that he could leave tomorrow. The door was open again, but it was not a doctor or a nurse. If it wasn't Inko Midoriya who saw Izuku with tears in his eyes. The door had been opened by Inko Midoriya. The woman looked around to see her son, so she went straight to hug him with tears in her eyes. She was afraid she had lost him, the only thing she had left of her family. Inko, I thought I had lost you, son. I was so scared, she whispered while shedding tears, thinking that she had lost him. Izuku just hugged her and saw the others making a sign to them in which they told them to leave them alone. The others understood and went out to wait outside. Zero was sitting watching what was possibly her mother-in-law. Izuku just looked at her and made a face asking her to leave. Zero saw her face and understood what she meant, but she didn't want to leave, so Izuku made a more serious face, making Zero resign himself and leave the room with a pout. After her departure, she went to sit with the others to talk about her quirk and what the UA is like. While they were talking, Izuku and her mother had separated and remained silent until Inko spoke. Inko, Izuku, son, the aforementioned saw his mother. I want you to leave the UA. Izuku was shocked to hear his mother's words. Izuku, why? He asked haltingly. He didn't want to abandon his friends. Inko, why? That's unnecessary, son. You died in the plane crash trying to save lives, and I don't want to lose you again. Inko finished, looking at her son before going out into the hallway to tell them that they were going to Japan again. Izuku, no, he said, making Inko stop walking. Inko, what? I asked, turning to look at him. Izuku, what I hear, Mom, I'm not going to leave UA, not after having people who truly support me to fulfill my dreams, he said, looking into her eyes. Inko, but son, you more. I didn't finish speaking because Izuku asked the same question as Mitsuki. Izuku, so you would have wanted me to jump leaving hundreds of people to die? He asked while Inko was silent. That's what a mother hero means, someone who gives everything to save others. Do you know what would have happened if he didn't direct the plane to that place? He asked while Inko just looked at him without saying anything. Hundreds of people would have died, those people I saved by giving my life in exchange, and that I would do it again if necessary. The room fell silent after that exchange of words. Inko just sighed and smiled as she sat next to him. Inko, you are just like your father, she said while giving a nostalgic look. He always cared about putting civilians before himself. I remember one time a villain gave him the choice between him or the civilians, she said while looking at her son. Izuku, and what happened? He said after having calmed down from the previous tantrum. Inko, your father made a complicated movement by trapping the villain, but he also got hurt when he had to protect a civilian from dying from a fireball. Apparently the villain had a fire quirk, but it didn't compare to your father's. It was incredible that he didn't hesitate to do that, finishing the story. Izuku, wow, Dad never told me that, he said, revealing that he spoke to him. Inko just looked at him in surprise. Inko, did you talk to your father? She asked, somewhat trembling. Izuku, yes. I talked to him when I was between life and death. He appeared and stopped me from entering the Chinese of absolute peace. He told me that they need me here, he said while smiling. We talked for a while he told me what happened to him. Apart from that, he always doesn't miss us and takes care of us. He looks at his mother, who had tears in her eyes. Inko just hugged him upon hearing that. While asking him to tell her everything they talked about, Izuku just began to recount what happened. 20 minutes later, wow, that's where they went for my chips underscore. Izuku, in the end he said that when he meets AM for having trained me poorly he said with a smile remembering that. The door was opened by AM Flacco, he saw them sitting talking so it was the perfect time to tell him. AM, I'm sorry to have interrupted your speech, but it's time to tell you something, Mrs. Midoriya he said seriously as he sat on the sofa. Izuku, are you sure AM, he asked while Inko just looked at them. Inko, what are they talking about? She asked, bewildered. AM, about young Midoriya's quirk he said making Inko more confused. Inko, wasn't he super strong? His quirk wasn't activated as a child because it was too strong that he could damage himself? I asked. AM just sighed and saw Izuku who just closed his eyes to open them and nod. AM, let me tell you a story, when quirks started to appear. He began to tell the story of the two. 10 minutes later. Inko looked like she was processing everything she heard. Inko, in short, my son has a quirk that was given to him by you, and you received it from your teacher and so on he said to which the two nodded apart from that the quirk called One for All, is destined to fight against its counterpart called All for One the two nodded again and this was caused by the fight between two brothers 100 years ago, since one wanted to steal everyone's quirks, and his younger brother receiving a strength quirk from his brother, fought against him so he wouldn't do that the two nodded again and now my son is forced to fight against a person who is more than a century old and who may end up dead? She said a little annoyed. Izuku, you didn't force me, mother, when you told me about a foe and his story I accepted it, since my dream is to become a hero that people can trust he said with a smile that AM smiled slightly while Inko got up. Inko, we'll talk tomorrow, I want to think about all this she said leaving the room. The two remained silent until AM got up to leave the room while saying goodbye to Deku. The aforementioned also said goodbye to stay alone in the room until the door opened again only now it was 02 who has different clothes. M got up to leave the room while saying goodbye to Deku. The aforementioned said goodbye as well to stay alone in the room until the door opened again only now it was 02 who has different clothes. Izuku just blushed a little, but watched as Zero didn't say anything other than just walking late into bed, looking at him with doubt. Izuku, what's wrong Zero? Did something happen to you? Are you hungry? He asked worriedly as he tried to get up to be able to check her better. Zero, no, I don't have any of that he said immediately seeing how he got up in pain. Izuku confused just sat down again. Izuku, so what's wrong? You can trust me he said while grabbing his hand. Zero just smiled and gave him a kiss. Zero, I just think about what I show you he said to which Izuku just tilted his head making Zero look tender who just smiled I mean, now that we found each other and kissed in the morning, I ask you why you don't do that? He asked making Izuku just have a short circuit.